Hey guys, tonight we drift back to a time when the sun rises slow and golden over the endless grasslands of West Africa. You're not just lying in bed, you're waking up in the royal city of Niani, the heart of the Mali Empire, where the morning air is thick with wood smoke and the promise of river water. The world is already bustling. You hear the distant bleating of goats, the rhythmic thump of pestles and mortars, and the low musical hum of griots tuning their instruments. You're about to slip into the sandals of a young prince, one whose life will eventually glitter with more gold than you've ever dreamed, but whose mornings, for now, are just as sleepy and ordinary as yours. Of course, if you're hoping to survive the royal court, you'll need more than a cozy blanket. Think quick wits, a strong stomach, and maybe a secret stash of honey cakes. You probably won't survive this, but honestly, that's half the fun. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening from somewhere unusual, drop your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far these sleepy stories travel. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink awake beneath a woven mat roof, the first rays of sunlight painting patterns on the walls. The royal compound is already alive. Servants are sweeping the courtyards, merchants are setting up their stalls just outside the palace gates, and somewhere a rooster is crowing as if the world depends on it. You stretch, yawn, and try to remember if today is a lesson day or a festival day. In the Mali Empire, both can be equally exhausting. Your earliest memories are filled with the gentle chaos of a royal household. Siblings squabbling over breakfast millet, elders debating the merits of different fishing nets, and the ever-present aroma of spicy stews bubbling over open fires. The palace is a maze of courtyards, each one home to a different branch of the family, and you quickly learn that knowing which auntie makes the best rice is almost as important as learning to read. Mainstream history tells us that the Mali Empire at this time is one of the largest and wealthiest in the world, stretching from the Atlantic coast deep into the heart of the Sahara. Gold dust glimmers in the riverbeds, and salt caravans snake their way across the desert, bringing wealth and stories from distant lands. You, however, are mostly interested in sneaking extra dates from the kitchen and avoiding your tutor's sharp eye. There's a quirky palace tradition. Every morning, the youngest children are sent to the river to fetch water, a task that's equal parts responsibility and opportunity for mischief. You quickly discover that if you linger long enough, you can watch the fishermen haul in their nets and maybe even snag a fresh mango on your way back. Of course, this means returning late and earning a stern look from the head steward, but it's a small price to pay for a taste of freedom. Historians still argue whether the royal city of Niani was truly as grand as the legends claim. Some say its palaces were gilded and its markets overflowing, while others believe the real magic was in its people and their stories. You, for your part, are too busy dodging goats and trying not to trip over your own feet to worry much about posterity. Your mornings are filled with lessons, learning to recite verses from the Quran, practicing your archery in the dusty courtyards, and listening to griots recount the exploits of your ancestors. You're expected to be both wise and brave, generous and clever. A tall order for someone who still can't quite remember where he left his sandals. There's a gentle rhythm to life here. The call to prayer drifting over the rooftops, the distant laughter of children playing in the shade, and the slow, steady heartbeat of a city that's always half awake. You find comfort in the routines, the taste of sweet porridge at dawn, the cool splash of river water on your face, and the reassuring weight of your father's hand on your shoulder. But even in these early years, you sense that you're part of something bigger, a living story that stretches back through generations, winding its way through the savannah like the Niger River itself. You don't know it yet, but your journey is just beginning, and the world is waiting, quietly, for you to take your first steps. The Keita dynasty's legacy wraps around you like a well-worn cloak, heavy with stories and expectations. You grow up hearing whispers and songs about your ancestors, especially the legendary Sundiata Keita, the Lion King who founded the Mali Empire centuries before you. His tale is everywhere, in the griot's songs, in the carved wooden masks, and in the very soil beneath your feet. You feel the weight of his legacy pressing gently but insistently on your shoulders, like the soft but unyielding heat of the midday sun. Sundiata's story is one of triumph over adversity. Born crippled and underestimated, he rose to unite warring tribes and forge a powerful empire. The griots say he was guided by destiny and the spirits of the land, and you sometimes wonder if a bit of that magic flows in your veins too. The palace walls are decorated with symbols of his reign, lions, baobab trees, and the sacred kola nut that binds your people together. You're told that the Keita bloodline carries the blessing of the gods, a promise that every ruler will be both a warrior and a wise shepherd. Mainstream history credits the Keita dynasty with shaping much of West Africa's political and cultural landscape. But there's a quirky side to their legacy too. For instance, it's said that the royal family kept a secret stash of laughing herbs to calm nerves before big battles or speeches. You imagine the court elders giggling behind their hands as they passed around these mysterious leaves, though no one ever admits to trying them. Historians still argue whether these herbs were real or just a fanciful tale to humanize the Stoic kings. Your childhood is steeped in this blend of myth and reality. Every festival, every ceremony is a chance to honor Sundiata and the ancestors who came before. You watch his elders perform dances that mimic the lion's roar and the river's flow, and you try to mimic their graceful movements, often ending up tangled in your own robes. The palace is a living museum of history, where stories are as valuable as gold, and you are both student and heir to this rich tradition. The Keita family's claim to greatness is not just about power, it's about responsibility. You're taught that a true king must be generous, just, and humble, qualities that seem at odds with the glittering wealth surrounding you. Your mother reminds you that gold is like water. It should flow freely to nourish the people, not be locked away in treasure chests. This idea sticks with you, even as you watch merchants haggle over gold dust and salt. There's a curious tradition that every new Keita ruler must spend a night alone in the sacred forest, facing the spirits of the land before ascending the throne. You hear stories of past kings who return transformed, their eyes shining with a strange light. Whether this ritual is real or a royal myth, historians still debate, but it adds to the mystique that surrounds your family. You wonder if you'll ever have to face those shadows yourself. As you grow, you notice how the legacy shapes not just your family, but the entire empire. The people look to the Keita rulers as symbols of unity and strength, and their faith in the dynasty is a quiet force holding the vast and diverse empire together. You begin to understand that your life is part of a much larger story, a story that will be told long after the palace gates close for the last time. Lessons by the river become the true heart of your early education. The Niger's slow, muddy current is both a classroom and a playground, and you spend as much time listening to elders as you do skipping stones. Your tutor, a patient man with a beard as white as river foam, insists that wisdom is best learned with wet feet and a full stomach. He teaches you to recite verses from the Quran, but also to recognize the calls of kingfishers and the warning grumble of a hippo just out of sight. The palace school is a lively place. Some mornings you sit cross-legged in the shade of a mango tree, tracing Arabic letters in the dust, while the griots weave stories of heroes and tricksters. Other days, you're sent to help the cooks, learning the delicate art of not burning millet porridge,
a skill that, according to your mother, is more valuable than any royal decree. You quickly discover that the palace cats are expert thieves, and if you turn your back on a bowl of stew for even a moment, you'll find it mysteriously lighter when you return. Mainstream history notes that Mali's royal children were expected to master both the sword and the pen. You practice archery with your cousins, your arrows sometimes flying wildly into the reeds, and you spar with wooden swords, learning that victory is as much about patience as strength. But the real lessons come from watching the adults. How your father settles disputes with a calm word. How your mother's laughter can dissolve a tense room. How the elders listen more than they speak. There's a quirky tradition among the palace children, a secret society that meets by the riverbank, their only rule being that anyone who falls in must bring mangoes for the group. You, naturally, become a frequent supplier. The society's main activity is inventing new games and occasionally plotting daring raids on the kitchen, which rarely succeed but always end in laughter. Historians still argue whether these childhood alliances influence the politics of the court, but you know they teach you more about loyalty and negotiation than any formal lesson. You're also taught the value of oral tradition. Every evening, as the sun dips low and the sky turns the color of ripe papayas, the griots gather to sing. Their voices rise and fall with the breeze, telling stories of ancient battles, clever queens, and the slow, steady march of time. You learn that memory is a living thing, passed from tongue to ear, and that forgetting is the greatest danger of all. One afternoon, you find yourself helping an elderly griot untangle her harp strings. She tells you that every knot holds a story, and that sometimes the hardest tales to unravel are the ones closest to your heart. You remember this lesson years later, when the weight of leadership feels like a tangle you can't quite undo. Historians still debate the exact curriculum of royal education in Mali. Some say it was strictly religious, others claim a blend of practical skills and poetry. What's certain is that your days are filled with a gentle, unhurried learning, where every mistake is met with a smile, and every triumph with a quiet nod. You begin to see the world not as a series of obstacles, but as a river winding towards something vast and unknown. And through it all, you never quite master the art of keeping your sandals dry.
Gold and salt. These are the twin treasures that shape your world, glittering just beneath the surface of daily life. Even as a child, you sense their importance. The grown-ups talk about gold the way some people talk about rain, with a mix of reverence and resignation. It's everywhere, and yet somehow always just out of reach. Locked in storerooms, sewn into clothing, or traded for things that seem far less exciting, like blocks of salt, which, you are told, are worth their weight in gold. You learn early that the Mali Empire sits atop some of the richest gold fields the world has ever known. The Bambouk and Bure mines, legendary even then, feed a steady stream of gold dust into the markets of Niani. Traders arrive from distant lands, their camels sagging under the weight of salt, cloth, and curious trinkets. You watch them haggle with local merchants, their voices rising and falling like the river's current. The gold, when it changes hands, is measured with tiny scales and careful eyes. You once tried to sneak a pinch for yourself, only to discover that gold is surprisingly difficult to clean out of your nose. Mainstream history tells us that Mali's wealth is built on this trade. Gold travels from the mines to the markets, then onward to North Africa, Europe, and beyond. Salt, meanwhile, is just as precious, essential for preserving food, curing leather, and keeping people alive in the sweltering Sahel heat. You're not quite sure why anyone would want to eat something that looks like a rock, but you dutifully watch the cooks sprinkle it into every pot. There's a quirky market custom that fascinates you: the silent barter.
In some towns, traders leave their goods on the riverbank and retreat out of sight, waiting for the other party to approach and leave their offer. No words are exchanged, just a quiet dance of trust and patience. You try this once with your sister, leaving a mango in exchange for her favorite bracelet. She responds by taking the mango and leaving you a note that simply says, "Nice try." Historians still argue whether this tradition was as widespread as the stories claim, but it certainly captures your imagination. The salt caravans are a sight to behold. Long lines of camels, their humps swaying like ships on a golden sea, trudge across the desert, each carrying slabs of salt cut from the mines of Tagaza. The drivers wrap their faces in indigo cloth, their eyes narrowed against the sun and sand. You once ask a caravan leader why he chooses such a difficult life. He laughs, revealing teeth stained blue from chewing cola nuts, and says, "Because the salt sings to me in my dreams." You decide that dreams must be a powerful thing indeed. At home, gold is both a blessing and a burden. It buys you fine clothes, rare spices, and the respect of distant rulers. But it also brings envy, suspicion, and the constant worry of thieves. Your father warns you that true wealth is not what you hoard, but what you share. Your mother, ever practical, reminds you that gold cannot buy a good night's sleep, or a second helping of her famous stew. Historians still debate the exact scale of Mali's wealth. Some claim that half the gold in the known world passed through your empire's hands. Others argue that the stories grew in the telling, like fish that get bigger every time they're described. What's certain is that gold and salt shape every part of your life, from the food on your plate to the stories you hear at bedtime. And as you drift off to sleep beneath your woven mat, you dream not of treasure chests or sparkling coins, but of endless caravans winding their way across the sand, bearing gifts for a world you're only beginning to understand.
Sundiata's shadow stretches long across the palace courtyards and into your dreams. Every step you take, every lesson you learn, seems measured against the memory of Mali's founding hero, Sundiata Keita, the Lion King, the magician warrior, the boy who couldn't walk until he could run faster than anyone else. His legend is everywhere, woven into the very fabric of daily life. You can't even sneak a honey cake without someone reminding you that Sundiata once survived for days on nothing but wild herbs and sheer determination. You hear the griots tell his story so often that the lines between fact and fable blur. They sing of his exile, his mother's tears, and the prophecy that foretold his greatness. They describe the day he bent an iron rod with his bare hands, the battles he fought to unite the Mande peoples, and the peace he brought to a land torn by rival kings. Sometimes you wonder if he ever had to deal with squabbling siblings or burnt porridge, but the griots never mentioned those details. Mainstream history recognizes Sundiata as the founder of the Mali Empire, a leader whose vision and courage transformed a patchwork of villages into a kingdom that stretched from the Atlantic coast to the Niger River's bend. His laws, the Kurokan Fuga, are said to have laid the groundwork for justice and social order. You're expected to know them by heart, though you secretly think some of the rules, like the one about not borrowing your neighbor's donkey without asking, might have been added by someone who lost a bet. There's a quirky palace ritual that takes place every year, the Festival of the Lion's Return. Children dress as lions and parade through the streets, roaring at anyone who looks important. The elders judge the best lion, awarding a prize that's usually a carved wooden staff or a basket of cola nuts. You win once, mostly because your tail falls off halfway through the parade and the judges are still laughing when you finish. Historians still argue whether this festival dates back to Sundiata's time or is a more recent invention, but it's the highlight of your year. Living in Sundiata's shadow is both inspiring and exhausting. Every time you hesitate or falter, someone reminds you that Sundiata never gave up. When you succeed, they say you have the Lion King's spirit. When you fail, well, there's always next year's festival.
You start to realize that legends are as much about hope as they are about truth. They give people something to believe in, a story to hold on to when the world feels uncertain. Your tutors push you to be brave and wise, but also to listen to the land, to the people, to the quiet voice inside that sometimes knows more than all the griots put together. You learn that being a leader isn't about being perfect, it's about showing up, even when you'd rather hide under your mat and pretend you're just another sleepy palace cat. Historians still debate how much of Sundiata's story is real and how much is myth. Some say he was a mere mortal who became a legend. Others insist he was always destined for greatness. You decide it doesn't really matter. What matters is the way his story makes you feel. Brave, hopeful, and just a little bit mischievous. And so you grow, always reaching for the light, even as Sundiata's shadow keeps you cool and just a little bit humble.
Fate and succession in the Mali Empire are rarely straightforward, and your own path to the throne is no exception. You're not the firstborn, nor the loudest, nor the most obvious choice for ruler. In fact, for much of your youth, you imagine your future will be spent in the shadowy comfort of the palace library, perhaps as a trusted advisor or the keeper of the royal cats, who, as you've learned, are far more cunning than most courtiers. But the empire has its own ideas, and fate, as it turns out, is a trickster with a fondness for dramatic timing. The line of succession in Mali is a winding river, shaped by tradition, circumstance, and the quiet maneuverings of powerful families. The Keita dynasty has always balanced bloodlines with merit, and sometimes the throne finds you when you least expect it. Mainstream history records that your predecessor, Abu Bakr II, was a restless soul with dreams as wide as the Atlantic. He famously set out on a grand voyage, determined to discover what lay beyond the edge of the world. Some say he sailed west with a fleet of ships, never to return. Others whisper that he simply vanished, leaving the empire in need of a steady hand. You watch the elders gather, their faces grave as they debate who should lead next. The air in the palace grows thick with tension and the scent of overcooked millet. There's a quirky superstition among the palace staff. Whenever a ruler leaves unexpectedly, they bury a clay pot filled with millet and honey at the crossroads outside Niani. This, they say, will guide the spirit of the departed and bring clarity to those left behind. You stumble upon such a pot one morning, half buried and already attracting a determined line of ants. Historians still argue whether this ritual has any real power, but you like to think it helps the empire's luck. Your own ascension is a lesson in patience and humility. The elders call you to counsel, their voices low and serious. They ask you questions about justice, generosity, and the responsibilities of kingship. You answer as best you can, trying not to fidget or let your mind wander to the mango tree outside. When the decision is made, it's with a quiet nod and a simple phrase: "The empire chooses you." You're handed a staff carved with lions and baobab leaves, and suddenly the world feels heavier and brighter all at once. Historians still debate the exact sequence of events that led to your rise. Some claim it was destiny, others point to political necessity, and a few suggest it was simply your turn in the great cycle of leadership. You don't dwell on the details. Instead, you focus on the faces of your people, the trust in their eyes, and the hope that you can live up to the legacy of those who came before. You spend your first night as heir to the throne, staring at the stars, wondering if Abu Bakr II is out there somewhere, sailing beneath the same sky. You promise yourself that when your time comes, you'll lead with kindness, courage, and just a touch of mischief, because, as you've learned,
Every good king needs a sense of humor.
The crown's first weight settles on your brow with a gravity you've never felt before. The coronation is a blur of color and sound, drums echoing across the river, dancers swirling in gold-dusted robes, elders chanting blessings as incense curls into the morning sky. You stand before your people, heart pounding, as the royal staff is pressed into your hand. It's heavier than you expected, carved with the faces of ancestors who seem to be watching, silently judging whether you'll rise to the moment or trip over your own sandals. You try to look regal, but your mind is racing. What if you forget the words to the blessing? What if you sneeze in front of the entire court? You glance at your mother, who gives you a tiny nod, her way of reminding you that even Sundiata probably had butterflies on his big day. Mainstream history notes that Mali's coronations were elaborate affairs, full of symbolism and spectacle, meant to reassure the people that the new ruler was chosen by both tradition and the will of the spirits. The first days of your reign are a whirlwind. Everyone wants something, a favor, a promise, a little extra gold for a cousin's wedding. You learn quickly that ruling is less about grand gestures and more about endless meetings, careful listening, and the occasional strategic nap. The palace is suddenly full of visitors, local chiefs with important news, distant merchants bearing gifts, and a griot who insists on singing your entire family tree every morning before breakfast. You suspect he's making up some of the names, but you let him continue. It's good for morale. And besides, who wouldn't want to be descended from a legendary crocodile wrestler? There's a quirky tradition you must uphold, the Day of Listening. For one full day after your coronation, you sit in the palace courtyard and hear the grievances of anyone who wishes to speak. Some bring real concerns, disputes over land, questions about taxes, requests for help with a sick child. Others, however, use the opportunity to air more creative complaints. One elderly farmer insists his neighbor's goats are plotting to overthrow his garden. You promise to look into it, though historians still argue whether goat conspiracies ever made it into the royal records. The first real challenge comes sooner than you'd like. A drought strikes the southern provinces, threatening the year's harvest. You gather your advisors, poring over maps and listening to the wisdom of elders who have seen more dry seasons than you've had birthdays. You send out grain from the royal stores, organize work parties to dig new wells, and hold prayers for rain. It's not a perfect solution, but it's a start, and the people notice. They begin to see you not just as a boy in fancy robes, but as a leader willing to share both burdens and blessings. Historians still debate how much power the early Mansas truly wielded, or whether the real strength of Mali lay in its network of loyal chiefs and councils. You sense that your authority is a delicate balance, earned, not given, and always one misstep away from slipping through your fingers. You learn to trust your instincts, but also to listen to the quiet voices in the room. The cook who knows which villages are struggling, the merchant who hints at trouble on the trade routes, the griot whose stories carry warnings as well as praise. At night, you sit by your window, the city quiet beneath a blanket of stars. The staff rests across your lap, and you trace the carved lions with your thumb, wondering if they ever felt as uncertain as you do now. You remind yourself that every great reign begins with small steps, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply show up, ready to listen, ready to learn, and, if necessary, ready to face down a herd of rebellious goats. Generosity in practice is not just a lesson from your childhood. It becomes the signature of your early rule. You remember your mother's words, "Gold is like water, meant to flow." So you decide to make kindness and giving the foundation of your leadership, even if it means your treasurers develop a nervous twitch every time you walk by. You start small, distributing extra grain to villages hit by drought, and sending gifts, bolts of cloth, baskets of kola nuts, and the occasional goat to elders and local chiefs.
The palace kitchens work overtime, preparing feasts for festivals and holy days. And you make a point of eating with your people, listening to their stories and gripes over bowls of spicy stew. Mainstream history notes that West African rulers were often judged by their generosity, and you're determined to set a new standard, even if it means you sometimes have to sneak a honey cake before the crowds arrive. There's a quirky custom you revive, the Day of the Open Gate. For one day each month, anyone in the city can come to the palace and ask for help, whether it's a sack of millet, a loan for a new fishing boat, or advice on how to keep monkeys out of the mango trees. You quickly learn that the line between genuine need and creative storytelling can be thin. One woman asks for gold to build a house for her pet chicken, promising it will lay golden eggs. You grant her a small sum, mostly out of curiosity. Historians still argue whether her chicken ever delivered on its promise, but the story becomes a favorite among the palace staff. Your generosity isn't limited to gifts. You appoint advisors from different regions and backgrounds, making sure every voice has a place at your table. You sponsor festivals that bring together musicians, dancers, and poets from across the empire, turning the palace courtyard into a swirl of color and sound. You even host a contest to see who can compose the funniest song about royal life. The winning entry, performed by a griot with a voice like honey and a grin like a crocodile, pokes gentle fun at your habit of losing your sandals, something the entire court seems to know about. Mainstream history records that your reputation for generosity spreads quickly, drawing traders, scholars, and travelers from far and wide. Mali becomes known as a land of abundance, where hospitality is not just a virtue, but a way of life. Yet you also learn that generosity must be balanced with caution. There are always those who seek to take advantage, and you rely on your advisors to help separate genuine need from clever schemes. There's a saying among the palace cooks: a full pot feeds many, but an empty pot teaches wisdom. You take this to heart, making sure the royal stores are never depleted, even as you give freely. You also establish a tradition of anonymous giving, sending gifts to struggling families without revealing the source. Sometimes you hear stories of people praising the spirit of the river for their good fortune, and you smile, content to let the river take the credit. Historians still debate whether your generosity was a political strategy or a reflection of your true nature. Some say you gave to win loyalty. Others believe you simply couldn't help yourself. You know the truth is somewhere in between. Giving brings you joy, but it also brings your people hope, a gentle reminder that leadership, at its best, is an act of sharing. And so the empire flourishes, not just on gold and salt, but on the quiet, steady current of kindness that flows from your heart to every corner of Mali.
A tapestry of peoples unfolds before you every time you walk through the palace gates. The Mali Empire is not a single thread, but a vast, colorful weave of cultures, languages, and traditions, each adding its own pattern to the whole. You grow up surrounded by this diversity, hearing the sing-song cadence of Soninke traders, the melodic Bambara prayers at dawn, and the laughter of Fulani herders drifting in from the grasslands. Your court is a crossroads. Every day brings new faces. Tuareg salt merchants wrapped in indigo veils, Sorko fishermen with hands calloused from casting nets, and Dogon storytellers who claim to know the secrets of the stars. The palace kitchens are a living map of the empire, with dishes that blend sweet dates from the north, spicy peppers from the south, and river fish cut just that morning. You quickly learn that the best way to settle a dispute is often over a shared meal, preferably one with extra honey cakes, just in case negotiations get tense. Mainstream history notes that Mali's strength lies in its ability to unite so many different peoples under one banner. The empire's laws are flexible, allowing local chiefs to govern their own lands while pledging loyalty to the Mansa. You make a point of visiting distant provinces, traveling by canoe, horseback, and sometimes even on foot, just to show that their voices matter.
In each village, you listen to grievances, join in dances, and try, usually unsuccessfully, to master the local greetings. Your attempts become legendary, especially after you accidentally greet a group of elders with a phrase that translates to, "May your goats sing sweetly." They laugh for days, and you earn a new nickname, the Goat Singer. There's a quirky festival in the southern provinces where everyone wears masks shaped like their favorite animal. You choose a crocodile, thinking it will make you look fierce, but the mask is so heavy you spend most of the day peering out from under its snout. Historians still argue whether these animal festivals predate the empire or were inspired by royal visits, but you're just happy for an excuse to dance badly in public. The diversity of your empire is both a blessing and a challenge. You work hard to ensure that every group feels seen and valued. You appoint local leaders as advisors, encourage intermarriage among noble families, and support markets where goods and ideas flow freely. Your palace becomes a hub for artists, musicians, and scholars from across West Africa, each bringing their own stories and skills. You also learn that unity requires patience. Disagreements flare up over land, water, or the proper way to cook rice. You mediate with a gentle hand, always reminding your people that the empire's strength comes from its many voices, not just one. Sometimes you settle disputes with a joke or a riddle, much to the confusion of visiting dignitaries who expect more solemnity from a king. Historians still debate how much harmony truly existed within Mali's borders. Some say the empire was a model of tolerance. Others point to simmering tensions beneath the surface. You know the truth is somewhere in between. Like any great tapestry, Mali's beauty lies in its complexity. 1,000 threads woven together, each one essential to the whole. And as you drift off to sleep, the sounds of distant drums and laughter remind you that you are not just a ruler, but a caretaker of stories, memories, and dreams that stretch far beyond your own.
Faith at court is the quiet, steady drumbeat beneath the swirl of palace life. From your earliest days, you feel its presence. In the soft call to prayer at dawn, in the careful way your elders wash their hands before meals, and in the gentle hush that falls over the city when the muezzin's voice rises above the rooftops. Islam shapes the rhythms of your days, but it mingles with older traditions, creating a tapestry of belief as rich and layered as the empire itself. You rise each morning to the scent of incense and the sound of verses from the Quran recited by scholars in the palace courtyard. Your tutors teach you to read and memorize these verses, their meanings unfolding slowly like the petals of a desert flower. Mainstream history notes that the Mali court was a center of Islamic learning, drawing scholars from across North Africa and the Middle East. You take pride in this reputation, even if you sometimes stumble over the longer surahs and need gentle reminders from your teachers. There's a quirky palace ritual that always makes you smile, the moon feast, held at the start of each lunar month. The cooks prepare sweet rice cakes, and the youngest children are sent to find the first sliver of the new moon. Whoever spots it first gets to eat the first cake, and, more importantly, avoids dish duty for the night. Historians still argue whether this tradition is ancient or a clever invention by palace cooks to get out of extra work, but it brings joy and a sense of wonder to the start of each month. Faith is not just about rituals. It's woven into the decisions you make as a ruler. You consult with imams and elders before issuing decrees, seeking wisdom in both scripture and tradition. You support the building of mosques and madrasas, inviting teachers from distant lands to share their knowledge. Yet you also respect the older beliefs that linger in the countryside. Spirit trees draped with offerings, secret wells said to be guarded by jinn, and the quiet prayers whispered to ancestors on moonless nights. You learn to walk the delicate line between tradition and change. Some elders worry that the new scholars from Cairo and Fez will forget the old ways, while others urge you to embrace every innovation.
You listen to both sides, knowing that true faith is not about choosing one path over another, but about finding harmony in the journey. Mainstream history records that your devotion to Islam becomes a defining feature of your reign. You lead prayers on holy days, fast during Ramadan, and encourage your people to do the same. You also introduced new laws based on Islamic principles, balancing justice with mercy. Yet you never lose sight of the gentle humor that makes faith a comfort rather than a burden. When a visiting scholar lectures you on the proper way to recite a prayer, you thank him politely and then challenge him to a game of who can spot the most shooting stars after sunset. He loses, but insists that you must have had help from the angels. Historians still debate how deeply Islam penetrated the countryside during your reign. Some say it transformed every village. Others argue that old beliefs persisted beneath the surface. You know that faith, like the river, finds its own course. Sometimes swift and bold, sometimes slow and winding, always shaping the land in ways seen and unseen. And so, as the stars blink awake above Niani and the city settles into a peaceful hush, you find comfort in the rituals that anchor your days. You whisper a prayer for wisdom, for patience, and for the strength to guide your people with a steady hand and an open heart.
The Hajj dream begins as a quiet longing, a gentle pull that grows stronger with each passing year. You hear stories from traders and scholars about the holy city of Mecca, its shining mosques, its bustling markets, and the sea of pilgrims swirling around the Kaaba like stars in the night sky. The idea takes root in your heart, mingling with your faith and your curiosity about the world beyond Mali's borders. At first, the dream feels impossibly distant. The journey is long and perilous, stretching across scorching deserts and strange lands. But every time a caravan returns with tales of distant cities and sacred rituals, your imagination stirs. You picture yourself among the faithful, wrapped in simple white cloth, your footsteps blending with those of thousands of others, all moving as one toward a single, sacred goal. Mainstream history tells us that the Hajj, the pilgrimage to Mecca, is one of the 5 pillars of Islam, a duty for every believer who is able to make the journey. For a ruler like you, it's more than a religious obligation. It's a chance to show your devotion, to connect Mali with the wider Muslim world, and to bring back knowledge and prestige to your people. You begin to plan, quietly at first, discussing the idea with trusted advisors and listening to the stories of those who have made the journey before you. There's a quirky rumor that reaches your ears. Some say that a previous Mansa tried to ride a camel all the way to Mecca without stopping, only to fall asleep and wake up in the wrong city. You laugh at the tale, but it reminds you that even the greatest journeys are made one step at a time, and that a sense of humor is essential when facing the unknown. Historians still argue whether this story is true or just a bit of palace mischief, but it becomes a favorite around the evening fire. As your dream grows, you begin to see the Hajj not just as a personal quest, but as an opportunity for your empire. You imagine the gifts you could bring, gold, scholars, musicians, and the wonders you could bring back. You picture the scholars you might meet, the books you might collect, the alliances you might forge. The dream becomes a plan, and the plan becomes a promise you make to yourself and your people. One day, you will lead a pilgrimage so grand that the world will remember it for centuries. Mainstream history records that your preparations for the Hajj become legendary. But at this stage, it's still just a hope, a shining thread woven through your days. You pray for guidance, you consult with your advisors, and you begin to gather the resources you'll need for the journey of a lifetime. Historians still debate what inspired you most: faith, ambition, or a restless curiosity about the world beyond Mali's borders. You know it's a little of each.
The dream of the Hajj becomes a beacon, lighting your path through the challenges of leadership and reminding you that no matter how great your empire, there is always more to learn, more to see, and more to give. And so as you gaze up at the stars and imagine the distant lights of Mecca, you feel the first stirrings of a journey that will change not just your life, but the destiny of Mali itself.
Caravan preparations begin with a whisper and soon swell into a symphony of activity that fills every corner of the palace and city. The Hajj is no ordinary journey. It's a logistical feat that will test your patience, your treasury, and the collective creativity of your entire court. You want your pilgrimage to be both a testament to Mali's wealth and a celebration of its spirit. So you set about planning with the same care you'd give to a royal feast, except this time the guest list stretches for miles. The first task is assembling the caravan. You call for the finest camels, tall, patient beasts with eyelashes long enough to make even the palace cats jealous. Each camel is chosen for its strength and stamina, and you quickly learn that camels, like courtiers, have strong opinions about everything. One particularly stubborn camel refuses to kneel unless serenaded with a specific song, a fact that soon becomes a running joke among your attendants. Mainstream history records that your caravan eventually numbers thousands: camels, horses, porters, cooks, guards, scholars, and musicians, all moving as one great river of humanity. There's a quirky tradition among the caravan organizers. Before departure, they bury a tiny charm, usually a carved wooden fish, at the edge of the city for good luck and safe passage. You join in, tucking your own charm into the earth and whispering a wish for cool breezes and gentle rains. Historians still argue whether these charms truly protected travelers or simply gave everyone a sense of comfort, but you like the ritual's quiet hopefulness. The palace storerooms empty as you gather supplies for the journey: sacks of millet and rice, dried fish, dates, sweet cakes, and enough water skins to float a small boat. You order bolts of colorful cloth for gifts, gold dust measured in tiny gourds, and intricate jewelry crafted by the empire's finest artisans. Your advisors debate the merits of bringing musicians. Some worry about the noise, others insist that music is as essential as water. You side with the musicians, reasoning that even the most devout pilgrim needs a lullaby under the desert stars. Mainstream history loves to dwell on the sheer scale of your preparations. It's said that you bring so much gold that the roads themselves glitter in your wake. You commission new saddles, tents embroidered with lions and baobab trees, and elegant robes for your closest companions. The tailors work night and day, and you catch more than one apprentice napping in a pile of half-finished cloaks. There's a flurry of diplomatic activity, too. You send envoys ahead to neighboring kingdoms, announcing your journey and requesting safe passage. Some rulers respond with lavish gifts: rare spices, ivory, even a pair of trained monkeys who quickly become the darlings of the palace. Others send polite warnings about bandits or harsh weather, but you trust in your careful planning and the protection of your ancestors. Historians still debate whether your preparations were driven more by faith or by a desire to impress the world. You know it's both. You want your pilgrimage to be a blessing for your people, a bridge to distant lands, and a story that will outlast even the golden walls of Niani. As the day of departure draws near, the city buzzes with anticipation. Children chase after the camels, merchants hawk last-minute wares, and griots compose songs to mark the occasion. You stand at the palace gate, watching the sun rise over the caravan, and feel the weight of history and possibility settle softly on your shoulders.
Sahara Crossing is where your grand pilgrimage truly begins, and where the world you know gives way to the vast, shimmering unknown. You rise before dawn, the air cool and heavy with anticipation. The caravan stretches out behind you, camels loaded with supplies, porters balancing baskets on their heads, musicians tuning their koras for the long road ahead. The city of Niani fades into memory as you set your sights east, toward the endless sea of sand. The first days are gentle, the land still green with scattered acacia trees and the occasional river to cool your feet. But soon the grass thins and the ground turns to hard-packed earth, then to sand.
The Sahara looms ahead, a golden expanse that seems to swallow sound and time itself. Mainstream history tells us that the trans-Saharan trade routes were lifelines connecting West Africa to the Mediterranean world. But to you, the desert feels like another planet, beautiful, dangerous, and full of secrets. There's a quirky superstition among your caravan's camel drivers. Before entering the desert, everyone must tie a blue cloth around their wrist for luck. The cloth is supposed to ward off sandstorms and bad dreams. You oblige, though you secretly think the color just makes it easier to spot each other when the wind picks up. Historians still argue whether such rituals had any practical effect, but you notice that everyone seems just a little braver with their blue ribbons fluttering in the breeze. The days in the Sahara are a study in patience. The sun climbs high, turning the sand to molten gold. You travel in slow, measured steps, following ancient tracks that snake between dunes and rocky outcrops. The world shrinks to the rhythm of footsteps, the jingle of harnesses, and the soft, steady hum of songs meant to keep spirits high. You learn that the desert is never truly silent. There's always the whisper of wind, the distant call of a bird, or the soft sigh of sand shifting underfoot. Water becomes the most precious treasure. You ration it carefully, savoring each cool sip at the rare oases where date palms cast their thin shade. At one oasis, you meet a family of Tuareg nomads who share their tea and stories. They teach you how to wrap your headscarf to keep the sun at bay and how to read the stars when the horizon disappears. You repay their kindness with gifts of gold and cloth, and in return, they promise to guide your caravan through the trickiest stretches of sand. Mainstream history often glosses over the sheer challenge of crossing the Sahara, but you live every moment. The blisters on your feet, the sting of wind-blown sand, the taste of dates eaten in the shadow of a lonely acacia. There's humor, too. One night, a camel escapes and is found the next morning calmly chewing on a merchant's hat. The story becomes a running joke, and you suspect the camel enjoys its new reputation as a hat connoisseur. Historians still debate how many travelers survived these crossings and how many were lost to mirages in shifting dunes. You count each member of your caravan every night, grateful for their laughter and resilience. You learn that in the desert, patience and good company are as valuable as gold. As the days blur together and the stars wheel overhead, you begin to understand why the Sahara has inspired so many stories. It's a place where every step is a leap of faith, and where even the smallest kindness, a shared sip of water, a song sung at dusk, can feel like a miracle.
Cairo's golden arrival is a moment you'll never forget. After weeks of sand and sun, the green ribbon of the Nile feels like a dream. Palms swaying along the banks, the air sweet with the scent of water and blooming lotus. The city itself is a marvel, sprawling and alive, its skyline bristling with minarets and the distant silhouettes of ancient pyramids. You approach Cairo not as a weary traveler, but as the leader of a caravan that glitters with gold, music, and the promise of stories yet to be told. The city's gates open, and suddenly you are swept into a world of noise and color. Crowds gather to see the fabled king from the west. Your camels are draped in embroidered cloth, your musicians play tunes that turn heads, and your attendants distribute gold dust with a generosity that leaves jaws hanging open. Mainstream history records that Cairo had never seen anything quite like your arrival. The Sultan's officials scramble to greet you, and rumors ripple through the city. Some say you travel with 1,000 camels. Others claim you can turn sand to gold with a wave of your hand. There's a quirky local custom that amuses you. Cairo's children run alongside your procession, calling out for coins and sweets.
You oblige, tossing handfuls of dates and gold dust into the crowd. The children's laughter is infectious, and soon even your most serious advisors are smiling. Historians still argue whether your gifts were acts of pure generosity or clever diplomacy, but you know they bring joy and a little chaos to your visit. The Sultan's palace is a labyrinth of marble halls and shaded courtyards. You're welcomed with feasts of roasted lamb, honey cakes, and spiced tea served in delicate cups. The Sultan himself is curious, eager to hear tales of Mali's wealth and wisdom. You exchange gifts, gold for silks, stories for secrets, and discuss everything from trade routes to poetry. The palace griots and Egyptian poets trade verses late into the night, each trying to outdo the other with tales of ancient glory. Mainstream history tells us that your generosity in Cairo becomes legendary. You give gold to the poor, donate to mosques, and shower gifts on scholars and merchants alike. The city's markets buzz with excitement, and for weeks your name is on everyone's lips. Some say the price of gold drops overnight, while others claim you inspire a new style of music, a blend of Malian rhythms and Egyptian melodies that echoes through the city's winding streets. You also encounter unexpected challenges. The sheer scale of your caravan overwhelms local officials, and your generosity sometimes causes confusion. One merchant faints when you pay him double for a bolt of cloth, while another insists on naming his newborn son after you. There's even a rumor that a camel from your caravan is elected honorary mayor of a Cairo neighborhood, though historians still debate the truth of that tale. Historians still argue about the long-term impact of your visit. Did you destabilize the local economy with your gifts, or did you forge new bonds between Mali and Egypt? You know that for a brief shining moment, you brought a sense of wonder and possibility to a city already rich in history. As you stand on a balcony overlooking the Nile, the city glowing in the evening light, you feel the weight of your journey and the promise of adventures still to come. You whisper a prayer of thanks, not just for safe passage, but for the chance to share Mali's spirit with the world.
The gold ripple begins with a single coin and soon spreads through Cairo like ripples on the Nile. You come to the city determined to be generous, and generous you are, perhaps more than anyone expects. Gold dust flows from your hands into the palms of the poor, the coffers of mosques, and the pockets of merchants. What starts as a gesture of goodwill quickly becomes the talk of the town, and then the talk of the world. Mainstream history records that your gifts are so lavish, so unprecedented, that they actually disrupt Cairo's economy. The price of gold tumbles, merchants scramble to adjust, and money changers are left scratching their heads. Some say it takes years for the markets to recover from your visit. You hear whispers that you've made gold as common as sand, though you suspect the city's children, now with gold dust in their hair, wouldn't mind if it stayed that way. There's a quirky rumor that sweeps through the city's markets. Some claim that touching a coin from your caravan brings good luck, while others insist that it will turn your hair as curly as a Malian prince's. You smile at the stories, knowing that legends often grow larger than life. Historians still argue whether you intended to cause such a stir, or whether your generosity simply exceeded even your own expectations. You know the truth is somewhere in between. Part joyful giving, part diplomatic theater, and part, let's see what happens if we really lean into this whole gold thing. You notice the ripple effects everywhere. Merchants who once haggled over every coin now spend freely, buying gifts for their families and investing in new ventures. Beggars who once lined the streets now walk with heads held high, their pockets jingling. Even the city's musicians find inspiration in your visit, composing songs about the King of Gold, whose caravan turned Cairo upside down. Mainstream history tells us that your generosity becomes legendary, not just in Cairo, but across the Islamic world. Travelers carry stories of your gifts to distant lands, and soon, everyone from Tunis to Timbuktu is talking about the Malian king who gave away fortunes with a smile. Some rulers send envoys to learn your secrets, while others simply marvel at the scale of your wealth. Of course, not everyone is pleased. Some local officials grumble about the chaos, and a few merchants worry that the sudden flood of gold will make it harder to do business. You listen to their concerns, offering apologies, and in some cases extra gifts to help smooth things over. You learn that generosity, while powerful, must be balanced with wisdom, a lesson you carry with you for the rest of your reign. Historians still debate the long-term impact of your visit. Did you destabilize Cairo's economy, or did you spark a period of growth and prosperity? Was your generosity a calculated move, or simply the natural expression of a king who believed that wealth was meant to be shared? You leave the city with more questions than answers, but also with a sense of satisfaction. You have shown the world the true spirit of Mali, not just its gold, but its heart. And as your caravan prepares to move on, you look back at Cairo, its markets still buzzing with excitement, and know that your journey is far from over. The ripples you set in motion will travel farther than you ever imagined, shaping stories and dreams for generations to come.
Pilgrimage tales swirl around your caravan like desert winds, growing taller and stranger with every mile you travel. The Hajj is a journey of faith, yes, but it's also a parade of personalities, mishaps, and unexpected delights. You find yourself at the center of a moving festival where every day brings a new story and sometimes a new headache. The road east from Cairo is crowded with pilgrims from every corner of the Muslim world. You share camps with Persians in jewel-toned robes, Berber traders with camels that snort at your musicians, and scholars from far-off lands who debate philosophy late into the night. Mainstream history notes that the Hajj was and is a great equalizer, a place where kings and commoners walk side by side. You quickly learn that, on the road, titles matter less than the ability to share a good joke or a bowl of dates. There's a quirky rumor that starts among your attendants. Apparently, one of your camels has developed a taste for poetry. Each night, someone reads aloud from a collection of verses, and the camel sidles closer, humming contentedly. The story spreads, and soon pilgrims from other caravans come to see the poet camel for themselves. Historians still argue whether the camel truly appreciated the finer points of Persian rhyme, but you're happy to let the legend grow. After all, every great journey needs a mascot. You collect tales as you go. There's the merchant who claims he traded a single sandal for a basket of figs and ended up with a new friend for life. There's a scholar who insists he can recite the entire Quran backwards. You never ask him to prove it, but he's very convincing. There's even a group of children who challenge your musicians to a dance-off and win handily, though you suspect your drummers let them have the victory. Mainstream history often focuses on the grand gestures, the gold, the gifts, the spectacle, but you find the quiet moments just as meaningful. You share tea with a widow traveling alone, listen to a young griot compose a song about the stars, and help a lost goat find its way back to its owner, earning you a new nickname, the Goat Guide. There's a festival near Medina where pilgrims gather to swap stories and goods. You trade a bolt of Malian cloth for a rare spice, and in return, hear a tale about a sultan who once tried to build a palace out of dates, only to discover that hungry guests make poor construction workers. The story makes you laugh, and you share it with your caravan that night, the firelight flickering on faces tired but happy. Historians still debate which tales from your pilgrimage are true and which are the inventions of bored travelers. You suspect it doesn't matter. The stories become part of the journey, weaving your caravan into the larger tapestry of the Hajj, a tapestry that stretches across centuries and continents. As you approach the holy city, your caravan is a little dustier, a little wiser, and a lot closer than when you began. The road has given you more than blisters and sunburns. It's given you memories, friendships, and 1,000 stories to tell when you finally return home.
Homeward reflections begin the moment you turn your caravan away from the holy city, the dust of Mecca still clinging to your sandals, and the echo of prayers lingering in your heart. The journey back to Mali is quieter, tinged with a gentle melancholy, and the satisfaction that comes from completing something truly extraordinary. You travel the same roads, but everything feels different. Your caravan lighter in gold, but heavier with stories. Your own spirit transformed by the sights, sounds, and lessons of the Hajj. You find yourself replaying moments from the pilgrimage as the days pass. The swirl of pilgrims circling the Kaaba, the taste of sweet dates shared with strangers, the laughter of children chasing after your camels. Mainstream history records your return as triumphant, but you know it's more complicated than that. You carry not just treasures and gifts, but new ideas, some that excite you, some that unsettle you, and some that you're not quite sure what to do with yet. There's a quirky new tradition that springs up among your caravan. Each night, someone tells a story about the journey, but with one detail hilariously exaggerated. One evening, a porter claims he saw a camel recite poetry in 3 languages. Another night, your chief musician insists he traded a single drum beat for a flying carpet ride. The stories become a competition, and you happily award the winner with the last of the honey cakes. Historians still argue whether these tales made it into the official records, but you know they're the glue that holds your weary travelers together. The return journey gives you time to reflect on what you've learned. You think about the scholars you met in Cairo, the merchants in Medina, the poets in Mecca. You remember the debates about faith, the lessons in humility, and the quiet moments of kindness that seem to matter more than any grand gesture. You realize that leadership is not just about giving or ruling, but about listening, really listening to the hopes and fears of those around you. Mainstream history often focuses on the gold you spent and the gifts you gave, but you know the true wealth you bring home is knowledge. You carry new ideas for architecture, education, and governance. You dream of building mosques and schools, of inviting scholars from distant lands to teach in Mali, of turning Timbuktu into a beacon of learning and culture. The possibilities feel endless, and for the first time, you understand why your ancestors spoke of the world as a river, always moving, always changing, always offering something new. There's a gentle sadness as you leave behind the friends you made along the way. Some travelers continue east, others return to their own kingdoms, but you promise to remember them in your prayers and your stories. You know that the bonds forged on the road will last a lifetime, even if you never meet again. Historians still debate the lasting impact of your pilgrimage. Did it change Mali forever, or was it simply a dazzling moment in a long, winding history? You suspect the answer is both. The journey has changed you, and through you, it will change your empire. One story, one lesson, one gentle act at a time. As your caravan crosses the last stretch of desert and the green fields of Mali come into view, you feel a surge of gratitude. You left home as a king. You return as a pilgrim, a student, and perhaps a little more human than before.
Building a legacy becomes your new obsession, as the familiar sights and sounds of Mali welcome you home. The city of Niani bursts into celebration at your return, drums echoing through the streets, children waving palm fronds, elders singing songs that blend the old with the new. You're showered with garlands, gifts, and more honey cakes than even your sweet tooth can handle. But beneath the joy is a quiet expectation. What will you do with all you have seen and learned? You waste no time. The lessons of your journey are still fresh, and you're determined to shape Mali into a beacon of prosperity and wisdom. Mainstream history remembers you as a builder, and it's easy to see why. You commission new mosques, their mud brick towers rising above the city like fingers pointing to the sky. You invite architects from Cairo and Fez, eager to blend their styles with local traditions. The result is a landscape dotted with domes, courtyards, and prayer halls that shimmer in the afternoon sun. There's a quirky challenge to every building project. The palace cats, now self-appointed inspectors, take to napping on fresh mortar or chasing lizards through scaffolding. Workers joke that a mosque isn't truly blessed until a cat has left its paw print in the wet clay. Historians still argue whether this tradition began with your reign or is as old as the city itself, but you secretly encourage it, believing a touch of mischief keeps the spirits high. You also turn your attention to Timbuktu, a city already famous among traders, but now destined for greatness. You envision it as a center of learning, commerce, and culture, a place where scholars and merchants from every corner of the world can meet. You fund the construction of grand libraries and madrasas, their shelves soon to be filled with books brought back from your travels. Mainstream history often highlights the Jingwadabur Wasque, a masterpiece of Sahelian architecture, as the crown jewel of your legacy. Your generosity continues, but now it takes on a new form. You offer land and resources to scholars willing to settle in Mali. And you support artists, musicians, and poets who bring fresh energy to the court. Festivals grow larger and more vibrant, drawing crowds from far and wide. You even sponsor a contest for the best new folk tale, and the winner is a clever story about a talking fish who outwits a greedy crocodile. A gentle reminder, you think, that wisdom often comes from unexpected places. Mainstream history records that your building projects transform Mali's cities, drawing admiration and envy from distant lands. Envoys from Cairo, Tunis, and even distant Venice arrive to marvel at the new mosques and bustling markets. You take pride in showing them around, always ending the tour with a stop at the palace kitchens for a taste of your mother's famous stew. Historians still debate how much of the construction was your own vision, and how much was inspired by the scholars and architects you met on your journey. You know it's a blend of both. The best ideas are always borrowed, adapted, and made your own. What matters most is the sense of possibility you've sparked in your people. They see their cities growing, their children learning, and their stories spreading far beyond Mali's borders. As the sun sets over the new skyline, you sit on your balcony, listening to the distant call to prayer and the laughter of children playing in the streets. You realize that building a legacy isn't just about bricks and gold, it's about hope, imagination, and the gentle courage to dream bigger than anyone thought possible.
Diplomacy abroad becomes a delicate dance as you extend Mali's reach beyond its borders. Your reign is marked not just by wealth and learning, but by the careful cultivation of relationships with distant kingdoms and empires. You send envoys bearing gifts of gold, ivory, and fine cloth, each parcel a message of friendship and respect. These ambassadors travel across deserts, seas, and mountains, carrying your name and your hopes to lands as far-flung as Morocco, Egypt, and even the courts of Europe. You receive envoys in return, their caravans laden with spices, manuscripts, and exotic animals. One memorable gift is a pair of lions, symbols of strength and majesty, which become the pride of your palace gardens, though you quickly learn that lions are far less cooperative than camels. Mainstream history notes that such exchanges were common among rulers seeking to build alliances, but you take pride in the personal touch you bring to diplomacy, often greeting visitors yourself and sharing stories over sweet tea. There's a quirky tale that follows one of your envoys to the Mediterranean.
Apparently, he tried to impress a foreign court by juggling gold coins, only to drop them all into a fountain. The court's laughter echoes in your memory, a reminder that even the most carefully planned diplomacy can have its awkward moments. Historians still debate whether this incident actually happened or was a humorous invention to humanize your emissaries. Your diplomacy efforts are not just about gifts and grandeur. You negotiate trade agreements that open new markets for Malian goods, secure safe passage for pilgrims and merchants, and foster cultural exchanges that enrich your empire. You encourage scholars and artists to travel, believing that ideas are as valuable as gold. Your envoys bring back news of distant lands, new technologies, and fresh perspectives, all of which you welcome with open arms. Mainstream history credits your diplomacy with raising Mali's profile on the world stage, but you know that true success lies in the relationships built on trust and mutual respect. You listen carefully to your envoys' reports, weighing their advice, and sometimes making decisions that surprise even your closest advisors. You learn that patience, humility, and a sense of humor are essential tools of statecraft. There's a festival in your honor held by a distant sultanate, where musicians perform songs about the Golden King who rules with kindness and wisdom. You attend in spirit, sending gifts and messages of goodwill. The stories told there travel back to Mali, weaving your empire into the broader tapestry of the known world. Historians still debate how much influence your diplomacy truly had, but you know it's about more than power. It's about connection. Building bridges across deserts and seas, between cultures and peoples, so that Mali's light can shine a little brighter in the vast night. And as you sit in your palace, surrounded by gifts and letters from afar, you feel a quiet satisfaction. You have made Mali not just a kingdom of gold, but a kingdom of friendship.
Scholars and scribes soon become as familiar to you as merchants and musicians. Timbuktu, once a dusty outpost on the edge of the desert, now hums with the soft shuffle of parchment and the quiet murmur of debate. You walk its streets and see the fruits of your vision. Madrasas bustling with eager students, libraries overflowing with scrolls and books, and courtyards where scholars from distant lands gather beneath the shade of acacia trees to argue about stars, medicine, and the meaning of justice. Mainstream history celebrates Timbuktu as a center of learning, and you take a quiet pride in knowing you helped make it so. You invite scholars from Cairo, Fez, and even far-off Andalusia, offering them gold, land, and the promise of a peaceful place to teach. Some arrived with trunks full of books, others with nothing but a head full of questions. All are welcomed, and soon the city's reputation spreads. If you seek knowledge, come to Mali. There's a quirky contest that takes root in the madrasas. Every year, students compete to see who can copy the Quran with the most beautiful calligraphy. The winner receives a new set of writing tools and, more importantly, bragging rights for the year. You attend the contest in disguise one year, marveling at the steady hands and patient hearts of the scribes. Historians still argue whether you awarded extra points for the clever student who slipped a tiny drawing of a cat in the margin, but the story becomes a favorite among the city's youth. You support not just religious learning, but every branch of knowledge. Mathematicians teach new ways to measure the stars. Doctors share remedies for everything from snake bites to sleeplessness, and poets compose verses that make even the palace guards weep. You encourage the translation of books from Arabic, Berber, and even Latin, believing that wisdom knows no borders. Timbuktu's libraries grow so full that you commission new shelves, and the city's scribes become famous for their speed and accuracy. Mainstream history notes that your investment in education transforms Mali's reputation. Traders now bring not just gold and salt, but rare manuscripts and scientific instruments. The city's scholars are invited to distant courts, and their letters travel as far as Cairo, Baghdad, and Granada. You take special pleasure in reading these letters, sometimes aloud at dinner, sometimes quietly before bed, savoring the sense that your empire's voice is echoing across the world. There's a quirky contest that takes root in the madrasas. Every year, students compete to see who can copy the Quran with the most beautiful calligraphy. The winner receives a new set of writing tools and, more importantly, bragging rights for the year. You attend the contest in disguise one year, marveling at the steady hands and patient hearts of the scribes. Historians still argue whether you awarded extra points for the clever student who slipped a tiny drawing of a cat in the margin, but the story becomes a favorite among the city's youth. You support not just religious learning, but every branch of knowledge. Mathematicians teach new ways to measure the stars. Doctors share remedies for everything from snake bites to sleeplessness. And poets compose verses that make even the palace guards weep. You encourage the translation of books from Arabic, Berber, and even Latin, believing that wisdom knows no borders. Timbuktu's libraries grow so full that you commission new shelves, and the city's scribes become famous for their speed and accuracy.
Every day, Mali, is a world of gentle rhythms and small wonders, a tapestry woven from the daily lives of people whose stories rarely make it into the grand histories. As ruler, you make a point of wandering the markets, slipping away from the palace with only a few trusted companions, eager to see your empire not through the eyes of a king, but as a neighbor, a friend, a fellow lover of honey cakes and good conversation. The morning begins with a scent of millet porridge bubbling over open fires, the laughter of children chasing chickens through dusty courtyards, and the steady thump of pestles in mortars. Market stalls bloom with color, baskets of dates and peppers, bolts of indigo cloth, and pyramids of salt stacked higher than a camel's hump. You pause to greet the fishmongers, who always have a joke ready, and the weavers, whose fingers move so quickly you wonder if they're part magician. Mainstream history often skips these details, but you know that Mali's greatness is built on the backs of its ordinary people. You watch women balancing water jars on their heads, men mending nets by the river, and children learning to recite proverbs as they sweep the streets. There's a quirky tradition in the city. Every week, neighbors gather for a story swap, where each person must share a tale, real or imagined, in exchange for a sweet treat. The best stories earn extra honey cakes, and you're not above slipping a few to the youngest storytellers just to see their faces light up. You notice how the rhythms of daily life are shaped by the seasons. In the rainy months, the fields turn green and frogs sing you to sleep. During the dry season, everyone rises before dawn to fetch water and tend the gardens before the sun grows fierce. You join in, sometimes helping to plant yams or carry firewood, always mindful that a ruler's hands should know the weight of work as well as the heft of a golden staff. Mainstream history records Mali's markets as hubs of commerce, but you see them as places of community. News travels faster than the river. Who's getting married, whose goat has gone missing, who baked the best loaf of bread this week. You learn that a well-timed compliment or a shared laugh can settle disputes faster than any royal decree. There's a festival each year where everyone, rich and poor, dons their brightest clothes and parades through the streets, singing songs that celebrate the harvest. You join in. Your dancing as questionable as ever, but your joy unmistakable. Historians still argue whether these festivals began as religious observances or simple excuses for a good party, but you know they keep the spirit of Mali alive. You also see the quiet struggles, families coping with drought, fishermen patching nets after a poor catch, healers tending to the sick with herbs and whispered prayers. You do what you can to help, sending aid where it's needed and listening to the wisdom of those who know the land best. You learn that leadership is less about grand gestures and more about 1,000 small acts of kindness. Historians still debate whether you truly understood the lives of your people or whether your visits were carefully staged. You know the truth. Every step through the market, every shared meal, every story told beneath the stars brings you closer to the heart of your empire.
And as night falls and the city settles into a gentle hush, you find yourself grateful for the ordinary magic of everyday Mali, a world where greatness is measured not just in gold, but in laughter, love, and the simple comfort of home.
Palace life and family weave the intimate threads of your reign, grounding the grandeur of empire in the warmth of home. Behind the towering walls and golden gates, your days are filled with the laughter of children, the scent of spices in the kitchen, and the gentle hum of daily routines that remind you why you rule, not just for glory, but for love. Your family is a lively one. You have several children, each with their own quirks and charms. The eldest is serious and studious, often found poring over manuscripts in the palace library. The youngest is mischievous, known for sneaking honey cakes from the kitchens and hiding them in the folds of his robes. You watch them grow with a mixture of pride and amusement, knowing that one day they too will carry the weight of the crown. Mainstream history often overlooks the personal side of rulers, but you know that palace life is a delicate balance of joy and responsibility. You share meals with your family, attend celebrations, and sometimes retreat to quiet gardens where you can escape the demands of court. Your spouse is a steady presence, offering counsel and comfort, and reminding you that even kings need someone to laugh with when the day grows long. There's a quirky tradition in the palace. Every full moon, the royal children hold a shadow play, using lanterns and cut-out figures to tell stories on the walls. You're the most enthusiastic audience, though your attempts at puppeteering often end in tangled shadows and laughter. Historians still debate whether these performances were purely entertainment or subtle lessons in history and morality, but they bring light and warmth to the palace nights. The inner circle of your court is a mix of trusted advisors, scholars, and longtime friends. You rely on them not just for governance, but for companionship and counsel. Some have been with you since your youth. Others joined after your pilgrimage, bringing fresh ideas and perspectives. Together, you navigate the complexities of politics, diplomacy, and daily life, often over cups of spiced tea and plates of sweet dates. Historians still debate how much influence royal families had behind the scenes, but you know that your family is your foundation. They remind you that even a king's greatest achievements begin at home, in the quiet moments shared with those who matter most. And as the palace settles into the soft glow of evening, you find peace in the simple joys of family life. A reminder that even the richest gold cannot replace the warmth of home.
The final years drift in gently, like the slow bend of the Niger at sunset. You feel the seasons changing in your bones, each rainy season a little shorter, each dry wind a bit more insistent. The palace is quieter now, the laughter of children replaced by the soft shuffle of scribes and the measured voices of advisors. You move more slowly, but your mind is as sharp as ever, keenly aware that the story of your reign is winding toward its last chapters. Mainstream history records that your later years are marked by reflection and consolidation. You spend more time in the palace gardens, walking beneath the shade of baobab trees and listening to the distant sounds of the city. You review the laws you've passed, the buildings you've raised, and the friendships you've forged across continents. You find satisfaction in the legacy you've built, but also a restlessness, a sense that there is always one more story to tell, one more lesson to share. There's a quirky rumor that begins to circulate among the palace staff. Supposedly, you've taken up the art of brewing your own hibiscus tea, experimenting with spices and herbs from every corner of the empire. Some say your concoctions are magical, able to cure headaches, heartbreaks, and even the occasional bout of royal insomnia.
Historians still argue whether you truly became Mali's most eccentric tea master, but the palace kitchens are never short on laughter as new recipes are tested. You spend more time with your family, telling stories by lamplight and passing on the lessons you've learned. You encourage your children to seek wisdom, to listen more than they speak, and to remember that true leadership is rooted in humility and compassion. You watch as they take on more responsibility, guiding the court and making decisions that once would have fallen to you. There's pride in their growth, but also a gentle ache, an awareness that your time as king is drawing to a close. Mainstream history is full of debates about the end of your reign. Some say you abdicated, passing the crown to your son while you retreated to a quiet life of study and prayer. Others claim you ruled until your final breath, determined to guide Mali through every challenge. Historians still argue over the details, piecing together fragments of stories and letters, searching for the truth in the spaces between. You find yourself thinking often of your pilgrimage, the long road to Mecca, the friends you made, the lessons you learned. You remember the taste of sweet dates, the sound of prayers at dawn, and the feeling of standing among thousands united by faith and hope. These memories become your comfort, a gentle reminder that every journey, no matter how grand, eventually circles back to where it began. As the days grow shorter and the nights cooler, you take solace in the knowledge that you have given your people more than gold or buildings. You have given them stories, dreams, and the courage to imagine a world brighter than the one they inherited. Historians still debate your final days, but you know that the true measure of a life is not found in the records of scribes, but in the laughter of children, the wisdom of elders, and the quiet hope that lingers long after the last drumbeat fades. And so, as you watch the sun set over the city you love, you feel a gentle peace settle in your heart, a peace born of a life well lived, and a legacy that will echo through the ages.
Echoes through history travel farther than you ever imagined, rippling outward from the banks of the Niger to distant lands and distant times. Long after your footsteps have faded from the palace courtyards, your name is whispered in marketplaces, sung by griots, and recorded in the dusty tomes of scholars far beyond Mali's borders. You become a legend, sometimes more myth than man, your story growing with each retelling, golden, generous, and just a little larger than life. Mainstream history marvels at your wealth, your pilgrimage, and the dazzling spectacle of your reign. Maps drawn in Venice and Cairo mark Mali as a land of gold, its king the richest ruler the world has ever known. Your journey to Mecca becomes the stuff of legend, inspiring travelers and dreamers for centuries. Some say you turned sand to gold with a touch. Others claim you built cities overnight. You smile at the exaggerations, knowing that every legend needs a little sparkle. There's a quirky twist to your legacy. In some places, your name becomes a byword for generosity. Parents tell their children, "Share like Mansa Musa," and merchants boast that their wares are fit for a king of Mali. Historians still argue whether the tales of your endless gold and boundless kindness are fact or fancy. But you know that the truth is always somewhere in between, a blend of memory, hope, and a touch of royal mischief. Your impact is felt not just in Mali, but across Africa and the wider world. Timbuktu's libraries attract scholars from every corner, its manuscripts treasured long after empires rise and fall. The mosques and madrasas you built become beacons of learning, their influence echoing through generations. Trade routes you strengthened carry not just goods, but ideas, mathematics, astronomy, poetry, linking Mali to the great centers of the Islamic world.
Mainstream history credits you with changing the world's perception of Africa. No longer a distant, mysterious land, Mali is recognized as a center of culture, faith, and prosperity. Your story challenges old prejudices and sparks new curiosity. Maps are redrawn, trade flourishes, and 1,000 stories bloom in your wake. Historians still debate which parts of your legend are real and which are embroidered by time. Did you really give away so much gold that you changed the price of money itself? Did you inspire the building of cities with a single word? You know that the most important truths are not always found in numbers or records, but in the way a story makes people feel, hopeful, proud, and connected to something greater than themselves. As the centuries pass, your name becomes a song, a proverb, a guiding star for those who dream of a world shaped by generosity and wisdom. The echoes of your life linger in every act of kindness, every quest for knowledge, every dream of a better tomorrow. And so, even as the world changes and new stories rise, the legend of Mansa Musa endures, golden, gentle, and forever woven into the tapestry of history.
Remembering Musa is not just about gold or grandeur, but about the gentle lessons that ripple through time, shaping hearts and hopes long after your reign. Your story becomes a lantern for dreamers and leaders alike, a reminder that greatness is found not only in what you build or give, but in how you listen, share, and care. In Mali and beyond, your memory is celebrated in festivals, songs, and quiet acts of kindness. Each year, children dress as kings and queens, parading through dusty streets with paper crowns and homemade staffs. Griots gather in the shade to sing your praises, their voices rising and falling like the river itself. In classrooms, teachers tell the tale of the king who made a pilgrimage so grand it changed the world's map, who filled cities with books and laughter, and who believed that true wealth was measured not in coins, but in generosity. Mainstream history marvels at your legacy, but your people remember the small things. The day you visited a village and shared a meal with farmers, the time you forgave a debt with a smile, the way you listened to stories from every corner of your empire. There's a quirky modern myth that if you whisper a wish to the Niger River on a quiet night, Mansa Musa himself will hear it and send a blessing. Historians still argue whether such legends are fanciful or rooted in some deeper truth. But you know that stories are the real gold, passed from hand to hand, heart to heart. Your legend inspires artists, writers, and musicians. New generations paint your image in vibrant colors, compose songs in your honor, and write tales that blend fact and fantasy. Timbuktu's libraries still stand, their doors open to all who seek knowledge. The mosques you built echo with prayers, and the markets you filled with laughter still bustle with life. Mainstream history credits you with changing the world's perception of Africa, but your true gift is something softer, a reminder that kindness, curiosity, and courage can outlast even the brightest gold. You leave behind not just monuments and manuscripts, but a spirit of hope that endures in every act of sharing, every quest for wisdom, every gentle joke told beneath the stars. Historians still debate the details of your life, but your story lives on in the dreams of those who believe in a world shaped by generosity and grace. And as the river flows on, carrying your memory to new shores, you rest easy, knowing that your greatest legacy is the gentle light you left behind. Now, as the final echoes of this story drift through your room, let your mind settle like the dust after a festival.
Imagine the soft hush of the Niger at dusk, the golden glow of lanterns flickering in distant windows, and the gentle laughter of children playing in the twilight. Feel the warmth of a world shaped by kindness, where every act of generosity leaves a ripple that grows and grows, reaching farther than you can see. Your breath slows, your thoughts soften, and the worries of the day melt away. You are safe, wrapped in the gentle embrace of history, carried by dreams of gold, wisdom, and gentle humor. Let the memory of Mansa Musa's journey be a lullaby, reminding you that even in a world of kings and empires, it is the small, gentle acts that shine brightest through the ages. So rest now, knowing that you are part of this tapestry too. The story continues with you, with every kindness, every smile, every moment of wonder. Drift into sleep, carried by the river of time, and let the golden dreams of Mali guide you to a place of peace. End of script. Sweet dreams.